In Mongolia today, about one-third of the population still lives as their ancestors did 1,000 years ago, as nomads. Nearly 900,000 people travel hundreds of kilometers each year across the steppes, carrying their yurts, herds of horses, sheep, and camels. Each family owns between 100 and 300 animals, not merely property, but a means of survival. On average, a Mongolian herder moves 4 to 6 times a year in search of fresh pastures. The land lease system hardly functions here. The steppe belongs to everyone and no one, so the main rule is simple: don't exhaust the grass faster than it can regrow. This way of life sustains nearly 40% of the country's economy through the production of meat, wool, and cashmere. Mongolia accounts for up to 40% of the world's cashmere exports. Yet climate change is striking this lifestyle relentlessly. Over the past 30 years, the average annual temperature has risen by more than 2 degrees Celsius, and droughts have become more frequent. After each harsh winter, known as a dzud, the country loses hundreds of thousands of animals. In 2023 alone, more than 1.5 million livestock perished. Young people are leaving the steppes en masse. 30 years ago, nomads made up over half of the population. Today, it's no more than 28%. Most move to Ulaanbaatar, where a third of residents live in yurts without sewage or heating, burning coal and firewood. This is no longer the freedom of the steppe, but a new trap: urban poverty and pollution that claim thousands of lives each year. Nomadism is not an exotic tradition, but a strategy for survival in a land where winter temperatures drop to -40 degrees Celsius and summer heat reaches +35 degrees Celsius. While the world talks about digitalization, people here still endure through movement, instinct, and the memory of the land. The only question that remains is, how many more generations will be able to roam before the steppe finally changes humanity? Or disappears itself. Without baths or toilets, this is not a metaphor, but a reality for most nomadic families in Mongolia. According to official data from the National Statistics Office, more than 60% of the rural population lacks access to centralized water supply. In the steppes, there are no pipes, no sewage systems. Water is carried from wells or rivers, sometimes from several kilometers away. In winter, when temperatures drop to -40 degrees Celsius, wells freeze solid, and water becomes a scarce resource. Urban areas fare little better. Even in the capital, Ulaanbaatar, more than 800,000 people live in so-called ger districts, neighborhoods of yurts without plumbing. There is no sewage system, and each family uses a pit latrine or an outdoor toilet. In summer, they overflow. In winter, they freeze. According to UNICEF estimates, up to 45% of Mongolian households are forced to live in sanitation conditions that pose serious health risks. The consequences are epidemics of hepatitis A, dysentery, and tuberculosis. In areas without sewage, the rate of intestinal infections among children is 3 times higher than in city apartments with running water. Because of the lack of basic hygiene, life expectancy in rural areas is 6 to 8 years shorter. The government has launched several projects for mobile showers and bio-toilets, but they reach fewer than 2% of nomads. A system in which hygiene becomes a luxury inevitably breeds inequality. And while other countries discuss smart cities, in the heart of Asia, hundreds of thousands of people still live without a single tap of running water. The question is simple: is this tradition or indifference disguised as the romance of the steppe? Hospitality in Mongolia is not merely a tradition, but a vital part of survival in one of the harshest climates on Earth. Here, where the distances between settlements stretch for dozens of kilometers and winter temperatures drop below -40 degrees Celsius, it is unthinkable to deny a stranger shelter. This is an unwritten law of the steppe, older than any state or border. In every yurt, one rule stands firm. A guest is entitled to a roof, tea, and food, no matter who they are or where they come from. Sociologists at the University of Ulaanbaatar have found that more than 85% of nomads consider helping a stranger not an act of goodwill, but a moral duty. On average, each family hosts 15 to 20 travelers a year, from herders to tourists. Economists note that this system effectively replaces the network of services that simply do not exist in the steppe: hotels, gas stations, cafes. And even in the 21st century, it functions more reliably than any bureaucracy. Yet hospitality comes at a cost. In many regions, nomads themselves live on the brink of poverty. Their average monthly income is less than $200, and food expenses make up more than 60% of their budget. Still, refusing a guest would mean losing face before the community. So they share what little they have: dried meat, milk, tea. For a tourist, this may seem exotic. For the host, it is a moral obligation that holds society together where no other laws apply. In Mongolia, the horse is far more than an animal. It is a social marker, a currency of honor, and a measure of manhood. When a young man seeks a bride's hand, he is not asked about his job or property. He must prove that he can support a family through strength and endurance. The traditional courtship ritual includes a test: to tame a wild horse, or to win a race spanning 25 to 30 kilometers across the open steppe. The victor earns not only the bride, but also status, the respect of the community, and the right to be called a true heir, a man. The horse in Mongolia is a strategic resource. According to the Ministry of Agriculture, the country is home to more than 4 million horses, nearly as many as its people. Most families own at least a few, and they are not a luxury, but a means of transport, trade, and competition. Equestrian games are part of Nadam, the national festival that combines 3 disciplines: wrestling, archery, and horse racing. Every year, over 30,000 riders take part, many of them children as young as 6. A wedding marks the culmination of this code of honor. It lasts several days, filled with songs, rituals, and airog, fermented mare's milk, a symbol of abundance. Yet behind the tradition lies a harsh reality. Maintaining a herd, buying horses, and offering gifts to the bride's family can cost the equivalent of 10 to 15 average monthly salaries. For many young couples, this becomes a financial challenge that often drives them into debt or work abroad. The romance of the steppe turns into an economy of survival. The horse remains a symbol of masculine strength, but perhaps it is time to ask, what must be tamed today to build a family? A wild stallion, or one's own poverty? Mongolia is one of the few countries in Asia where women consistently outperform men in education. According to the National Statistics Office, 63% of university students are women, and in graduate programs, the share rises to nearly 70%. Higher education is seen as a path to independence, especially among the generation that grew up after the socialist era. Yet this very advantage has turned into a social trap. Due to urbanization and the mass migration of men to the steppes or abroad, cities now face a shortage of potential partners with similar education and income levels. Around 40% of working-age men are employed in traditional herding or manual labor, where the average monthly wage does not exceed $250 to $300. Meanwhile, women are concentrated in medicine, education, and finance, fields that demand higher cultural and intellectual standards. The result is a demographic imbalance. In the 25 to 34 age group, there are only 87 men for every 100 women, and the gap is widening each year. Ulaanbaatar, home to nearly half of the country's population, is turning into a city of single, highly educated women, unable to find partners of equal standing. Some choose to emigrate. According to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, up to 15% of Mongolian women with higher education seek employment or marriage abroad, mainly in South Korea and Japan. Education, once a promise of freedom, has become a source of social isolation. When knowledge becomes an obstacle to forming a family, the issue is not one of gender, but of society itself. The question remains, is a country where women learn faster than traditions change, ready to embrace a new balance of power? Ulaanbaatar is officially the coldest capital city in the world. Its average annual temperature is just -1.3 degrees Celsius, and in winter, thermometers regularly drop to -35 degrees Celsius and below. The freezing season lasts for about 6 months, and in January, the difference between daytime and nighttime temperatures can reach 30 degrees. In these conditions, the city survives on coal, its main but fatally toxic source of heat. About 60% of Ulaanbaatar's residents, more than 900,000 people, live in so-called ger districts, neighborhoods of yurts and shacks without central heating. Each family burns 4 to 5 tons of coal per winter to warm a single room. As a result, the city consumes over 1.5 million tons of mostly low-grade coal every year. Emissions from these stoves create a dense layer of smog that lingers through the winter because of air inversion. According to the World Health Organization, the level of fine particulate matter, PM2.5, in Ulaanbaatar exceeds safe limits by 25 to 30 times. Children living in these districts suffer from bronchitis and asthma about 40% more often than those in rural areas. The World Bank estimates that air pollution costs Mongolia up to 8% of its GDP annually in healthcare expenses and premature deaths. The government tried to ban the use of raw coal in 2019, but alternative fuels proved too expensive for most households. Now the country faces a grim choice: let people freeze, or let them breathe smoke. And the question stands, as cold as Ulaanbaatar itself: how many more winters can the nation endure before staying warm of a slow form of self-destruction? The Mongolian diet reflects geography more than culinary preference. When winter lasts 6 months and temperatures drop below -40 degrees Celsius, survival depends on calories. Thus, the foundation of Mongolian food is mutton, beef, butter, cheese, and airog, fermented mare's milk. According to the FAO, over 85% of the average Mongolian's caloric intake comes from animal products, while fruits and vegetables account for less than 5%, one of the lowest shares in the world. Vegetables simply don't grow in the steppe. Summers are short, droughts frequent, and irrigation scarce. Imports are costly. Even in the capital, a kilogram of apples can cost as much as 2 liters of gasoline. In rural areas, the diet is almost entirely based on meat and dairy. Average annual meat consumption per person exceeds 100 kilograms, twice the global average. Instead of water, people often drink milk tea or airog, which contains 1 to 3% alcohol and serves both as a beverage and a source of protein. But this diet has a dark side. According to the WHO, more than 25% of Mongolian adults suffer from hypertension and cardiovascular diseases linked to high saturated fat intake. The average male life expectancy is 66 years, about 10 years lower than the European average. The government has launched programs promoting greenhouses and vitamin-enriched foods, but in such a harsh climate, these efforts are a drop in the ocean. The Mongolian diet is not a matter of choice, but of climate and economy. The question is whether the country can find a balance between tradition and health, without betraying its way of life. Ulaanbaatar after sunset feels like another country. In the city center, it's not yurts that glow, but the neon signs of bars and karaoke clubs. According to the city administration, more than 40% of food and entertainment venues operate at night. People under 35 make up the majority of the capital's population, and they are shaping a new urban culture, a blend of Western rhythm and Mongolian directness. Cafes with Wi-Fi, nightclubs with DJs from Seoul, and craft pubs brewing local beer are thriving against the backdrop of an economy where the average monthly salary barely exceeds $600. Yet just a few kilometers away lies a different reality. In the ger districts, the lights go out after midnight, and the only sound is the wind. There is no reliable electricity, no internet, No nightlife. Only old cassette players and the deep tones of throat singing, passed down through generations. According to the National Energy Agency, about 15% of the capital's residents are still not connected to a stable power grid. This contrast has become the defining symbol of 21st century Mongolia, a country where digital startups coexist with nomads who still heat their stoves with dried dung. In 2024, Mongolia officially had more than 600 night venues, while 1 in 3 suburban families relied on battery-powered lamps. Some sing BTS songs in karaoke bars. Others sing ancient melodies so they won't forget who they are. The roads of Ulaanbaatar are a living experiment in anarchy, one that somehow works. Traffic lights are more of a suggestion than a rule. Lane markings are either worn away or ignored, and parking often happens 3 rows deep. Yet despite the chaos, the city is not overwhelmed by crashes. According to official police data, around 14,000 traffic accidents occurred in the capital in 2024, but only 2.5% resulted in serious injuries, fewer than in many European capitals with far stricter traffic laws. The reason is not discipline, but instinct. Mongolians drive much as they live in the steppe, relying on reflexes and awareness of others' movements. What matters here is not the road sign, but eye contact. In the flow of hundreds of aging Japanese cars, where even brake lights sometimes don't work, an unwritten rule prevails. If you see, you yield. And it keeps the system from collapsing. The city's transport infrastructure can't keep up with its growth. Over the past 20 years, the number of vehicles in Ulaanbaatar has surged from 60,000 to more than 650,000, while the roads have remained largely the same. Traffic jams stretch for tens of kilometers, and the average rush hour speed is under 15 kilometers per hour. The government introduced an odd-even day driving system, but its effectiveness is estimated at no more than 10%. This disorder isn't the result of impunity. It's adaptation. People learn to move where rules fail. And as Ulaanbaatar keeps expanding and traffic lights blink into emptiness, one question endures. How long can instinct substitute for a system? Lake Kuvsgol is a strategic freshwater reservoir of Asia, known to Mongolians as the younger sister of Baikal. It holds about 70% of Mongolia's entire freshwater reserves and more than 1% of the world's total. Stretching nearly 136 kilometers long and reaching depths of up to 262 meters, its water is so pure that, according to UNESCO standards, it can be safely drunk without filtration. Underwater visibility reaches up to 24 meters, placing Kuvsgol among the 5 clearest lakes on the planet. In winter, it turns into a vast sheet of ice. With ice thickness exceeding 1 meter, cars and even trucks are officially allowed to drive across it. During the annual Winter Festival, which draws more than 15,000 visitors, locals compete in ice skating, sled racing, and even motorcycle races across the frozen surface. Yet beneath this beauty lies a growing threat. As tourism and vehicle traffic on the ice increase, pollution levels rise. According to Mongolia's environmental agency, hydrocarbon concentrations in the lake have grown by 40% over the past decade. The lake is fed by 96 rivers and streams, but only one, the Egg River, flows out, meaning any contamination accumulates for years. Summer water temperatures rarely exceed 14 degrees Celsius, slowing natural purification. Meanwhile, tourism infrastructure is rapidly expanding. More than 200 resorts and guest camps now operate along the shoreline, most without proper wastewater treatment facilities. Kuvsgol changes color from deep blue to gray, depending on the season and pollution levels. It is called the Chameleon Lake, but the issue is not its color, it's its future. How much longer can it remain pristine if those who come to admire its beauty leave behind the trace of their progress each day?